Okay, it is 6:30 p.m. and welcome to week 6 of critical issues in criminal justice. And I told you week 1 that the quarter would go very, very fast, and I told you that before you knew it, we would be completing this quarter. So the quarter has roughly 5 more weeks to go after this week. And we're, as I like to remind people, when you get to week 6, you climb to the highest point. So then you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is actually 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So on our way down. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Okay. So now you see what I'm looking at. Of course, you recognize this page. Gives all the information about me. Again, you know my policy on reaching out to me. You guys have not really reached out to me a lot, but if you needed to, you know the rule. And these are sources that will help you, reminding you that you're to conduct research, which means the sole source of your papers shouldn't be the textbook. But you guys have been pretty good with that. And the key thing that many students keep running into problems with is dealing with written assignments in APA format, citations in the body and references at the end. It's very, 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 very important that you do that in order to maximize your points. And it is important that you do both, not just one or the other. Okay, and then this is a reminder that after today, we will have 2 more lectures, weeks 8 and week 10. So let's take a look at our announcement for the week. Corrections and rehabilitation we're dealing with today. Your reading is Chapter 11 of Visions for Change, Crime and Justice in the 21st Century. And then the section, World of Prisoners. And then you have a discussion assignment that's due. Help me. And you want to make sure that you participate in that. Your initial post was due on Tuesday, and now your reply post will be due day after tomorrow, which will be Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Finally, I'm reminding you to keep working on your critical issues paper. Your annotated bibliography with at least 5 research sources is due at the end of week 7, but not this week. So make sure that you get going with that. So this is a light week, so let's take a look at what we have on the calendar just to show you. Give me a minute here. Let me pull up our calendar. Okay. So you see from looking at the calendar where we are today, your reading assignment, your initial post, your lecture, and then your reply post. And then you notice that on the 14th, which happens to be Mother's Day, so you guys get a break, you don't have an assignment that's due. But you want to make sure that you pay attention to the following week. And then that 21st, this is your annotated bibliography. I did send you a sample of what an annotated bibliography was like and what you need to do. And you want to make sure that you complete that with the correct number of sources that I had indicated in the announcement for this week. So now let's take a look at, again, this week's, let's look at the assignments again. Very brief, because you only have one. And so you're going to make sure that you submit those cogently. You've done some little research, provide some information, support your responses with details. Make sure that by Saturday that you submitted at least one reply post. I encourage you, though, to submit more than one. So you want to make sure that you do that. So that's the only assignment. Very light week for you guys. Then your lesson content. Let's look at what we're going to talk about here. Again, we're going to talk about these items here in just a few minutes. But there's your discussion. Major field test introduction, don't worry about that. Keep working on your critical issues paper. Your annotated bibliography with at least 5 research sources is due in week 7. So now let's take a look at this. For some reason or another, this always does this whenever I come to this one. Let's see if I can get this better. World of Prisoners issue. Yeah, some reason or another, I always have trouble getting this one in whenever I use this mode. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pause. Okay, now let's go back. Let's go back to the classroom for a minute. Okay, let's go back to the classroom a minute. Okay, and let's do this. Let's pause the recording. Okay, now let me share the screen. Okay, so now we are back. So now let's go over a little bit about the world of prisoners' issues. As you know, when a person is convicted, found guilty, pled guilty, they leave the system of law enforcement and the courts, and they find themselves in the phase called corrections and rehabilitation. So sometimes people find themselves in situations where they find themselves locked up, and that's when you end up getting actually into the jail. Some of the issues that involve in this process is mandatory sentencing. Mandatory sentencing means that the judges don't have a choice but to send a person to jail or to prison for a period of time. And because of the mandatory sentencing, it's stated that the prisons are overcrowded because there are not enough places to house these people. However, though, the argument in favor of mandatory sentencing is that there should be some just desserts for the actions that you take. In other words, the crime that you commit should have a commensurate sentence that goes along with it in order to hopefully discourage the individual from committing the crime again. The bottom line is, rather than a slap on the wrist, to give a certain number of sentences and to take it out of the hands of the courts so that the legislation is passed. So the question is, should this be discontinued? I don't know, because they are good and bad on both sides. But I think that realistically that mandatory sentencing is important, and it gives some bite to the criminal justice system and with corrections. The second question is, what should be provided to inmates? Well, I have said a number of things that, remember, inmates are incarcerated and they are humans. And that the key thing is to try to get the inmates to change their direction, to go in another direction. Question, should they have televisions? Of course they should have televisions, because the fact that you want to give the inmates some of the same things that they had while they were out in the free world. You don't want to pet them, but you do at the same time want to give some time where inmates are able to view television. Gym, of course, because one of the things that you want these individuals to do is to work off some of the problems that they have. Exercise seems to giving people that are not incarcerated a breakaway from the real world and helps in terms of dealing with the circumstances, situations that they face. So a gymnasium should be an outlet for the inmates. Should they have an access to college education? I have spoken many times that education is critical to reducing recidivism. It is cheaper to educate than to incarcerate. And as a result, you have people who are going to be coming out after serving time. It is a opportunity to try to get them to go in a new direction. I've participated in a few programs that are really favoring education. When I was a criminal defense lawyer, there was a judge that had a program in his courtroom that if you qualified for probation and your offense was a minor offense, that you could, and you had not obtained your high school diploma or your GED, that you would be given the opportunity to obtain your GED through a program that was called Probation Challenge. And in that program, if you completed the program successfully, then you would have the charges dismissed. Now, it's been demonstrated that people who were in that program went in a new direction. In fact, the students who achieved the level and received their GEDs had a taste of education in a different form they had never had before, and really was something that they wish they had had earlier in life, an opportunity to be able to, and maybe not have ended up as criminals. And so what happened is many of those individuals decided to continue education beyond the GED. We partnered with a junior college in the city of Chicago, and we had many students who continued on to junior college, got associate's degrees, and some even went even further and got bachelor's degrees. But those individuals were so busy with their education that they lost interest in crime. In other words, they were introduced to a better way of living. So I think that one of the things that we should, as a society, recognize is that we're not going to incarcerate people forever. They're not in most crimes. Of course, there's some crimes that require mandatory life sentences. But let's say, put it this way, that there are many individuals who are incarcerated for drug use and things of that nature that they need help with. And then there are individuals who they don't know any other way to operate in terms of life. But getting an education will point them in another direction. It is not a right or a privilege. Someone said, well, yeah, people go to prison to go to college. I don't know anybody that would do that. But I do know that there are individuals, too, who go in to prison and they come out worse than they were when they went in. But let's intervene instead and put in the right to an education. And I think we would be making some inroads into recidivism. Sports, well, of course, that's an outlet again. Counseling, absolutely essential. Well, I'm again supporting the rehabilitation approach. Drug treatment, I've already spoken on that. I have seen individuals go into jail and prison, and then they come out and they haven't had the necessary drug treatment that would help them in terms of not becoming a repeat offender. And some have ended up in death in situations. I had a young man that I represented once who had been incarcerated, got out, and he ended up, when he got out, back to what he did before, and that was committing residential burglaries. Well, he ended up catching a case that we referred to it while he was on parole, and so he ended up before the judge, and I told his family, do not get him out on bail because he needs some help. And the reason why he was committing those offenses is because he was addicted to drugs, and so he was committing those crimes to support his habit. Well, what ended up unfortunately happening with this young man is they did get him out, and shortly after he was out, he went out, tried to do another residential burglary. He ran across the expressway or the freeway and to the other side of town where he lived, and he ended up in a police chase trying to get back home, jumped the fence, ran back to the expressway, and unfortunately didn't make it across this time. He was hit by several vehicles and was killed. And so they were very, very, very sorry and wish they had followed my advice. But the key thing is this, is that if you don't take care of the issue that's the cause of the situation, such as to support drugs, then support themselves by getting drugs, then you're not doing a service to our society either. Number 3 is, how can gang conflict be handled in prisons? Well, I know people who work in the corrections, and they'll tell me it's not easy. And the reason why it's not easy is because of the fact that first of all, the facilities, they do try to segregate the gang conflict. I mean, in other words, if you remember, one gang put you in one section, another. However, there are times when the gangs do incite each other and come together. And so it's a problem. And because of overcrowdedness of the prisons, it's hard to keep them segregated in a way that would eliminate conflict. But there is an attempt that takes place quite frequently in prisons to try to deal with it, but not very successful. How can prison rape be prevented? Once again, because of the fact that people have learned a lot about corrections and rehabilitation in the situation, that they try to segregate individuals who are child molesters or commit rape outside and come into the jail or prison, because there are people who are waiting on them and will do the same thing to them. But again, it's hard to eliminate it. They do look very carefully to seek to watch over inmates, but it's still one of the major problems. Should conjugal visits be allowed? Well, that's a whole other issue. Would that prevent or minimize the rape charges, the rapes that take place in correction facilities? Some do have conjugal visits. However, though, there are some hardcore individuals who are not going to get conjugal visits, and they might continue to participate in rapes. So both sides on that, conjugal visits taking place. The key thing is to try to take away some things that that person would lose because they're incarcerated, but keep them close to being as civilized as possible, so that when they are released, that they won't come out angry and commit more crimes. Some states have ended parole, and I don't know the crime rate well, individuals don't have parole. There are people not being monitored adequately. The question comes out is these are issues that many experts have continued and will continue to look at. The death penalty. Does it reduce crime? Well, that's been decided already, is that no, the recidivism rate for death penalty is not. It doesn't decrease crime because people don't think about death as a penalty to a crime when they commit it. However, the only party that really is deterred from committing further crime is the person who's executed. Is it ethical? That's up. Some say yes, some say no. It depends on which side that you come down on. And some people believe that it's ethical if they were family members, they had family members who were victim of violent crimes. I don't know. That's not always true because both my parents were killed in a violent fashion, but I'm against the death penalty. And the reason why I'm against the death penalty is because I believe that it puts the person out of the misery for the crime that they committed. And so I think that you will discover that it'll depend on your personal point of view. And so that varies. So now let's look at but these are just some of the issues that arise in correction institutions and correctional settings and so forth. Very interesting ideas. The world of prisoners, the treatment option. There is conflict between rehabilitation and punishment. Funding, it says, is often directed toward incapacitation and retribution rather than treatment and rehabilitation. However, the public says may have little confidence in the success of treatment. And, you know, I think that one of the things that we need to really consider when we start thinking about rehabilitation as opposed to punishment, again, is that that individual is going to be released at some point. And when that person is released, what kind of a state of mind do we want them to have in? Do we want them to have a state of mind where they are been at least pointed in a new direction? Or do we feel that because some of the benefits of rehabilitation, which we talked about earlier, education and all the other issues, is kind of rewarding them? Well, again, I come down on the side to say that I think rehabilitation is better because, again, I'm a person who's in favor of less correctional facilities and more educational institutions. So there are programs in cognitive and behavioral therapy. You get into the minds of the inmates. There's group treatment. There's chemical castration for sex offenders. I think we have problems with those kinds of issues with our Article 1, with our cruel and unusual punishment, the 8th Amendment. And so I don't think that we want to even consider or entertain that. Anger management counseling is important, I think, because of the fact that we want to do that with people that are outside. But I think that that's an option that ought to be considered. Faith-based programs, prison ministries. I am a pastor of a church, and I'm a believer that faith-based programs and ministries are a benefit to correction and point toward rehabilitation. Definitely, I've already talked about substance abuse counseling. Very, very, very important that you address this issue. And our little side here, it says you can check the internet to find where hardened inmates are taught to dance rather than fight to resolve conflicts. The key thing is you want to take the energies and challenge them in another direction. A rodeo of an event. And so the question is, This says the result is reduced prison violence and recidivism. And the question is it ethical? The key thing that we are talking about here, in a nutshell, when you look at all of these issues that are presented in these sections that we're talking about right now, is are we going to prepare those individuals to come out and to be contributors to society, or are we going to find ourselves where there's a revolving door and recidivism continues to exist, and these people continue to commit offenses, sometimes not violent, but in the process of supporting various drug habits or what have you, commit violent acts, and that innocent people are hurt. Since we are going to live with individuals who are released from prison, there's no islands that these people are generally placed on. It would be in the best interest of our society to try to get them to go in another direction. But that's the rehabilitation point. Cell dogs. And so here's an article that you want to take a look at. Are dogs and horses the solution to prison treatment rehabilitation? You can check out that article on your own time. I'm not going to go into that, but you need to take a look at that. I don't know, to be honest with you, but take a look at it there. And then the next thing is rehabilitation. It says today American criminal justice focuses on punishment rather than rehabilitation and restorative justice. One reason for the focus on punishment and retribution is the belief that treatment programs are not effective. Well, I disagree with that. I think the problem is that there's not enough money to have the adequate treatment programs to give them a chance to show how effective they would be. It's presumed by all too many people that before you try something, because of the fact that the kind of individuals that you are dealing with, that you give up on them. Well, as a person who believes in treatment programs, I think that these individuals are going to be less likely to commit crimes in the future, and so they're going to find themselves in situations where they will not be repeat offenders. So let's take a look at some of these questions. According to the social learning theory, what is the belief that individuals have control over their environment and destiny? The social learning theory, either external locus of control, internal locus, self-esteem, control, expectancy notion. So according to the social learning theory, external locus of control, internal, self-esteem, control, expectancy notion. So let's see. This is not correct. It says the answer is B. So let's go back and let's look at B. Internal locus of control. And that would make sense because individuals believe that their behavior is guided by their personal decisions. People have to give account for their actions. External means individuals believe their behavior is controlled by outside events or others. Inmates must have internal locus in order to succeed legitimately. So basically what they're saying here is that they must accept the responsibility for their actions. All the following are significant barriers to maintaining family bonds with inmates, except the family does not know the location of the prison, the distance from the family to the prison, strict visitation rules by the prison, the family lack funds to make trips. Okay. It says the answer A should be selected. Okay. And let's go back and look at that. The family does not know the location. So if the family doesn't know the location, it says should be selected because it usually is not a significant barrier. Families do know the location of their family members. Even so, staying in touch with a family member in prison is not an easy feat. Many prisoners see less and less of their families. So, and then it says for those prisoners serving lengthy sentences, they will also lose family members to age and death. So people's lives will be changed while they're in custody. The degree to which inmates feel they have control over their behavior has a significant effect on their behavior. True. The statement is true. Inmates who have an internal locus on control will improve their behavior. They will not feel like victims, but recognize that they have the fate in their own hands. And that's the end of that exercise. Okay. And finally, rehabilitation in prisons. Let's take a look at this video, Custody and Treatment, entitled Substance Abuse Programs. This is one I found very interesting. Whenever I look at this, I'm going to take the time to put this back, see if I can get it on. And it will come on now when I do this. Okay. There we go. Custody and treatment. There we go. This is the one we're going to look at.
Well, Lifeline was originated in 1993. Since its inception, we've had over 2,000 graduates, and it is a three-phase program which addresses alcoholism, drug addiction, and behavior modification. Our program, we believe, is highly successful because of the fact that it is peer-oriented and the fact that the length of treatment is longer than, we'll say, private treatment. Here we have a program that lasts at a minimum, and I stress the word minimum, of 6.5 months. The other fact that it is because it is a peer-oriented program, we have approximately 270 men in active treatment in this facility with a client to counselor ratio of approximately 67 to 1. We have to have something established to where that when the staff is not here, the program basically runs itself. It is a three-phase program that starts in this particular unit as orientation. They spend 38 days in orientation learning the rules and regulations of our particular program. Once they complete the orientation phase, they move across the hall into the adjacent unit and they go through community phase. There they are given an individualized treatment plan, a comprehensive interview with their counselor to determine individual needs, and then they start working on those while they're over there. After they've met certain criteria and they've advanced through the second phase, then they come back and are seniors in this unit and act as big brothers or mentors, if you will, to the brand new people who are orientators. The therapeutic community approach is where one is encouraged to take responsibility for his actions. First, he has to understand why he committed the offense, and then he also has to determine what needs to be done so that he will not commit a similar offense. We believe that alcohol and drugs are only a symptom of the disease, and alcoholism and drug addiction are in fact a disease. As a matter of fact, in 1963, the American Medical Association determined that alcoholism and drug addiction are diseases because it met their criteria for disease. Now, we feel in our program that this micro-community, if you will, if they cannot follow rules and regulations in here, how can they follow rules and regulations out in the community? The background of the inmates varies in education from illiteracy to college graduates. As a matter of fact, we've had resident in this program that's actually had an MBA. So alcoholism and drug addiction do not discriminate from anybody. Well, I think the keys are, first, that the individual has to recognize that he does have a problem. If he doesn't recognize there's a problem, he has nothing, absolutely nothing to work on. But probably one of the most important components of our program is not even in our facility. It is on the outside. We have an aftercare, a continuum, if you will, of care that one of the local treatment centers has been gracious enough to afford us the ability to have meetings in their facility. This way, the gentlemen have a forum upon being released where they can come back and discuss problems that they have reintegrating into society. I believe national statistics tell us that about 80% of all inmates incarcerated in all the facilities across the United States are incarcerated due to an alcohol or drug-related crime. Unfortunately, not everyone gets this, but what they learn from is the individuals who have been down that road before. They see that maybe someone who is a little more mature in years that has spent numerous years behind bars and what they did to get them in that position. So a lot of times the mature or older inmates act as role models to the younger ones. Unfortunately, today our age group is becoming lower and lower. The majority of our inmates are coming to us 19, 20, 21 years old. And as a result, they haven't really had to feel long-term incarceration. It's a sobering reminder, this wall of lost dreams. This wall demonstrates to the active members in the program what are the possibilities when they go out. Do I want to follow the suggestions that were given to me? Do I want to follow that comprehensive aftercare plan that I agreed to? And if I don't, what may happen to me? As a result, these men, since the inception of our program, have lost their lives due to high-risk behavior and going back into the same lifestyle that they started in. In our program, we have 6 cardinal rules, and one of those cardinal rules is no alcohol, drugs, or violence. And any kind of drugs in this facility is considered a major breach of security, and they are dealt with in a disciplinary board. If they are caught with drugs, we, of course, drug test them, or if we suspect that they're using drugs, we drug test them. But as a whole, we don't have that much of a problem in our particular program. Now, it does happen. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it hasn't happened, because it has. But they would end up probably being placed in a segregation pod and going in front of the disciplinary board, and the disciplinary board would determine what their sanctions would be. Well, those are what we call our house tools, and those are what we hope to reintegrate into the lives of these men. It's not that we have bad men. We have men who have made bad decisions. And these principles, these morals, if you will, are what they were taught growing up. And somewhere along the way, they lost sight of these things. As I said, these aren't bad men. These are men that have made bad decisions, and we hope to try to get them to reintegrate those principles into their lives. And if they do, they become more open, honest, and accountable for their actions, and they start thinking before they act. They start taking responsibility, not just as a human being, but as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a child. And they actually contribute to society when they're released. One of the things, as I stated earlier, that I'm particularly proud of is our continuum of care, our aftercare. This is not recovery. This is discovery. Treatment does not end when they call their name to go out and be released. Treatment really begins, and recovery really begins when they step outside and smell that fresh air on the other side of the fence for the first time, and what am I going to do now? First of all, we make them write out a detailed aftercare plan, what they're going to do when they're released, because a person that writes out their plan is 7 times more likely to accomplish it. We make them write it out, and if they have a sponsor, which we hope to employ with the majority of our people in our program, their sponsor will be the one picking them up. There's no shame in my game. I'm a recovering person myself, and to show you God has a sense of humor, I now work in the program that I went through. So, you know, when we have people that are connected in the recovery community, picking these guys up outside the door, not their buddies, not their friends, but someone who is connected in recovery and taking them to a meeting, their chances go up dramatically if they're making a meeting their first night out of prison. You know, so many of them concentrate on what they've missed the whole time they've been locked up versus what they've gained.
Okay. So that was a pretty good piece that as we conclude for today, gave you some good insight on how they view substance abuse. And I think that you can take that and apply that to some of your research that you're doing for your projects. If some of you are dealing with this issue, this is a very good piece. So anyway, I'm going to conclude this session. I know why many of you didn't come, because you really don't have a lot of stuff to do this week, so that's okay. We have 2 more lectures to go, week 8, and I will hopefully see some of you then. So I'm going to say good night.